Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 8. It is called Holding the Wrench. And if you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. Full spoilers for the episode, as always. So this episode, obviously we have John Henry Irons in custody and the interrogation that's going to take place there. But we get a sort of an emotional framing device of Lois in therapy, sort of teasing. It's kind of your classic TV thing where this is obviously a little bit later in the timeline. She's teasing something that goes down. I
appreciate that it never felt the need to flash up with, you know, X amount of hours earlier or something. It was just,
yeah,
it trusted us to go, no, we understand what's happening here. Yeah,
absolutely. There was no need to do that. And to the point where I actually thought there was going to be a trick. Halfway through the episode, I was kind of thinking, is this going to be like a swerve and this is actually the other Earth Lois? Like something that happened on that Earth with like John Henry? It obviously never went that way, but there was a second where I thought, oh, maybe I'll swerve us here and it'll actually be the other Lois.
That could have been a possibility, like for sure them pulling that sort of trick.
Because for a long time there was a lot of not mentioning names. There was no, you know, it was quite late on those scenes before she started actually using names like John and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it was clear once Clark like suggested she go and
of course, yeah, that was the moment. It was like, okay,
yeah,
but there was a point before that where I thought, oh, maybe they're going to swerve it and it's going to be something to do with like her regretting something on her Earth and it'll tie into what John Henry's going through. And I just in the last 30 seconds realized that if nothing else, we should call him John Henry just so we don't confuse him with John. At any point.
Joe, I was gonna say it made a point at the end of the episode of the AI calling him John. And I was like, okay, so we're just gonna go with John, and then you just brought that up, and yeah, John Henry.
Yeah, I think John Henry for us, obviously the characters, you know, because they'll have context, but just to make it easy to understand the conversation.
Yes, lots of people know multiple Johns, and
yes,
it's fine.
Yes, prostitutes especially know lots of Johns. That was a good joke.
Terrible.
That was a great joke.
It really wasn't.
That was a gold joke. So I will say I am impressed that the show is progressing through plot a bit quicker than like they could have dragged. We could have had like 4 episodes of John Henry in a cell and like them try to talk to him.
We were still half expecting him to be villainous till right near the end of the season, right?
Yeah, and not only did they give us the first step of like some sort of trust in something, they did it by like doing kind of a good version of the Martha scene.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Like not
spear and all.
Yeah, well that's the thing. I was the spear first. I was like, oh, he's standing over him with a spear. He's going to kill Superman, and it only occurred to me later that the actual thing that's used here to talk him down, it's the same. It's obviously it's a different name. It's Natalie instead of Martha, but it's effectively the same thing where Lois says, I know about Natalie! And he's like, why did you say that name? Like, he doesn't say it out loud, but with his eyes, that's what he's saying with his eyes. And I'm like, they just did a good version of the Martha scene. But it worked.
This is definitive proof that it is possible, and it is just that hack that messed it all up.
Yes. Well, see, here's why this works here, right? And why it didn't work in that movie. Now, obviously, he knows who Natalie is, so he's the one who's supposed to know who Natalie is, right? The surprise here for him is that Lois knows, and that Lois has found. I mean, not just that. If he knows about Natalie, then he knows about the fact that he was married to a Lois Lane. Clearly, she's opened a can of worms. She's discovered a lot of things. But hearing that name come from what sounds like the mother of his daughter, like. That is a genuine surprise. The problem with I mean, there's a lot of problems with the Martha scene in Batman v Superman, but one of the big weird problems of it is the idea that Batman's surprised to hear the name when I'm like, he's a detective. Surely he's looked into who Clark is. Why would he not have like noticed that he's got a mother named Martha? Would that not have come up at any point? And he's detectiving. He's the world's greatest detective, but never got the name of his parents. Look at that. It just
don't think about it too hard.
I mean, there's a lot more problems, right? But in the context of this, you know what? MVP of this episode is Elizabeth Tulloch, because I think the episode is fairly solid and does a lot of good things. I think there's like 3 scenes in this episode that she elevates just through her performance.
She is fantastic in this episode.
It is shocking, like, because this thing, so they're teasing throughout these therapy scenes, right? We'll come back to the Martha scene when we get to it, but they're teasing these therapy scenes that she got angry at someone, and you're thinking, okay, who could it be, right? But you know, aside from maybe my quick tangent of, oh, what if this is a swerve and it's Lois from another Earth, right? And you're like, okay, who is it going to be? It's probably one of the kids, but I don't know, maybe we're interested if it's Clark. Maybe she gets angry at Clark for some reason, you know, that could be a thing. And of course, what ultimately is that John's feeling a little bit useless because, you know, Jordan can help like hold the truck together while Clark heat visions it, and he's literally holding the wrench, hence the title of the episode. And he's like, hey mom, you're going to investigate, can I help you? Can I like do the Lois Lane stuff? Since I clearly can't do the Superman things, can I come be Elaine? And she's like, yeah, sure. And so they go into John Henry's camper and they're going to investigate, and surely enough the AI like is cool with Lois. It's like, you know, identify herself. She's like, Lois Lane. Now, clearly this was programmed to be okay with Lois on their Earth.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, all simple stuff. And of course they're looking at these fancy computer. They see the you know, all the wedding photos. They see Natalie. And of course the big swerve that comes with that. Of course we'll get to that in a minute. You know, the Natalie of this Earth, as it were. But the big thing though is that Jonathan, seeing how sort of upset all this is Mary's mother, wants to go back into the camper van, finds the cache of weapons, and is kind of like, oh, weapons. And then immediately
that though, he watches the video, right?
He does. Yeah, he does.
Which I don't know if Lois saw, because he looks pretty shocked by that, and I don't think he ever mentions it to her afterwards. To
be specific, the video we're talking about is the one of the Lois's death, like the news broadcast we saw last episode. Yeah. No, he does see that. He sees that before, he finds the armory and stuff. Which, for a split second, I was like, are they going to try and do something where John starts to not trust his father? But I doesn't feel like they're going down that path. No,
I think it's more just the fear of, you know, the shock of watching his mum get murdered, basically, by his dad. Yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot to process. And he finds the weapons on the computer AI. He's like, intruder alert, identify yourself, or, you know, it's the Ed 209, basically. You'll be terminated in 30 seconds. Lots of laser sights hit him, you know, on the chest. And he starts screaming, Lois runs out, and she gets scared, and, you know, she calls for Clark with the button thing, and he flies in and saves him. So decent enough scene. I did like how genuinely scared John was when Superman was kind of like shielding him. He looked like he was whimpering. He looked like justifiably terrified that lots of machine guns were firing at him.
He's a regular kid that is literally being fired upon, you know, with basically no warning.
Yeah, he likes to act tough, like any kid does, but clearly the situation...
I'm sure most teenagers would be scared if there were bullets flying towards them.
I mean, most humans of any age, really.
Most reasonable people,
yes.
Yeah.
But the scene after this, so the reason why I was building to this is like, okay, so she gets angry at someone. I wasn't expecting the scene where she gets angry at someone to be so good.
Yeah, I know. We're so used to, you know, CW fights, right?
Yes,
between characters where they're just like nothing.
We need to talk in the hallway.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the balcony if you're Supergirl.
It was the balcony, wasn't it?
But you know, she gets upset at John. You know, questions why he was doing what he was doing, and he kind of hits on a couple of points that kind of tie into his character right now. Is that, you know, John Henry's got this big hammer that kind of gives him a special ability, even though he's normal otherwise, and it's like, oh, maybe I could get a weapon, maybe I could have something, you know, I can't help, I'm vulnerable, like, you know, Jordan can take these hits now, and, you know, Superman, you know, maybe I could, you know, find something to help. And obviously both parents are a little distressed that you were looking for a weapon. You wanted a weapon, but then Lois goes absolutely bananas at him and yells and shouts, and she genuinely sounds like a mother who is mortified that her child put himself in a stupid situation. It sounded very real and natural to me, and I think the best part about it, you know, apart from her performance, obviously, which is first and foremost, is like halfway through this yelling rant, there's a point where Clark just kind of turns and looks at her like, wait, this is going further than it should. This like, now I'm concerned about how she feels right now, rather than the you know, like, yeah, John needs to learn a lesson here, and he overstepped and did something stupid, but this
is
is good
clearly
over a
gone
line.
to her.
Yeah.
And it's afterwards. He as soon as John's out of the room, he's like, "Right, are you okay?" She's like, "I'm fine." And he's like, "I'll mark that as a no then."
Joe, yeah, what was good about this scene once John leaves, like once she sends John to his room or whatever, is
Because it's already very good before this.
yeah. What's really good about this latter part of this scene is that they do this great thing where Clark confronts her about her what she's feeling, and not in like a bad way, like, you know, why are you being such a bitch or anything like that. Just in a, clearly this is getting to you. You need to talk to me, and you know what? I accept if I'm not the person that you need to talk to right now, but you know, maybe go talk to the therapist, right? But it played out in a very sort of natural way where she was very. It felt like a genuine wife, angry. So angry that the husband's trying to help, he's trying to do the right thing, but clearly our tempers.
But knows,
yeah.
Let's not step in the way of this. He might be Superman, but he's still scared of her temper.
Yeah, but he's still Superman and manages to suggest the right thing. I don't know, it seemed to balance the natural real couple fight, the real parent fight, with who the characters actually also are in terms of comic book lore and like the personalities. I appreciate that. This is why the show is good, because it can balance these things together.
I think it's funny because before the show started, we were very worried. Beyond just the CW things, in like the week or two before it aired, there was, you know, the director from the start talking about, you know, the Man of Steel version being the best version of Superman that, you know, on screen, and it had a very dour trailer. We were pretty concerned. I think it's safe to say there's clearly some, I don't want to say influence from those movies, but you know, they're not. They don't hate them, clearly. Like, I think you know the Martha scene in this is probably an intentional homage to that. But whoever's writing this understands it so much better that they're able to take those ideas and actually make them work.
Yeah, I mean, it's like say I wouldn't even say it's perfect. I would say, you know, I think it loves to show Superman in like moody lighting a little bit too often. Like I wouldn't mind a little bit of brightness in terms of the visuals, even though the visuals are good from a composition and, you know, stylistic standpoint.
I agree with that, but it's the sort of thing that I can be like, I can let that slide, because as long as Superman himself isn't all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just, right? You know, if I'm being like, you know, let's not just give the, you know, small things a pass. If I'm noticing little nitpicky things,
I've got small things. I'm sure. I mean, I always do, don't I? Let's be honest.
So yeah, that scene was fantastic, and it felt so emotionally real, and it kind of, and not that I was doubting the therapy scenes and the build up to it, but I wasn't necessarily expecting for it to really pay off where I really bought the breakdown.
I get where you come from. When you say you weren't doubting them, it's not that, you know, you think, oh, these are going to be terrible or anything like that. It's more just, okay, you know, it's the side framing device. It'll be fine. It's just there to add a bit of drama, like it is in 90% of TV shows that do this exact thing, which is, let's be honest, a lot of TV shows at some point do this.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having a framing device. I mean, you do so many episodes, it makes sense that once in a while you want to shake things up and have a framing device for an episode. Like, it's fine.
Sometimes they don't need to have a big purpose, or you know, it's there just to break up the monotony and everything. Yeah, and that's fine.
Just to be a little different. And obviously in this particular episode, it serves as a good bit of exposition as well, because ultimately, once we get to kind of, like, other than her son almost dying, why she's so on edge. And you can kind of see it when she first sees the name of the kid, right, the daughter, and she says Natalie. There's kind of like a moment of like that name means something. Like, clearly, like, I didn't necessarily think to immediately she had a miscarriage and she was going to have a daughter named Natalie, but I thought, oh, maybe that was like if the boys were girls, like before they knew the gender, maybe that was like the girl's name that was picked out, kind of thing. I mean, that might even still be true, given that she was going to come later. You know, maybe they already had Natalie in the chamber ready to go, but yeah. So she reveals she had a miscarriage, and it's something she doesn't obviously like to bring up very much. And, you know, given how strong a character Lois is and how strong she likes to sort of, you know, project herself to be at any given time, it makes sense. This is something she kind of does avoid talking about. So it didn't feel cheap that we haven't heard about it in the last, you know, especially since it happened, you know, 14 years ago, whatever it's been.
And it's the sort of thing that I'm pretty sure, you know, most women don't talk about often. Right? Yeah, that's a pretty realistic thing. Like, I know people who have had miscarriages, and, you know, I know it affects them, like, for a long time. if not, for the rest of their lives.
That's something you bring up it's not something you bring up as an anecdote or anything like that. It's
something that comes up in very rare scenarios. But it's unless you happen to already know. There's a good reason why you probably never would know.
Yeah. So with the scene where she kind of admits that and kind of admits to herself that she kind of blames herself for it, even though she hasn't. Logically, there's no reason why it's her fault. And the therapist obviously reiterates all these reasons. This is not your fault. This is something that happened. This is a tragedy that happened to you. This is not something you caused. There is a big, big difference. But her breakdown, where she kind of phrases it that way, though, where she kind of says she almost lost another kid effectively and it'd be her fault again. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but that was the gist of the sentiment that she gives out sort of emotionally.
Yeah.
Well performed. And I think my favorite scene is the anger scene. I think that scene is probably my favorite scene of the episode. There's a couple of other great scenes with her later on, but that's the one that really sticks out.
I agree, but this scene where she's just having the absolute breakdown in therapy as well is up there.
Yeah, because obviously after this you have the quote unquote Martha scene, or we should call it the Natalie scene, I suppose. I think again her performance elevates this, because the fight that's happening, it turns out one of the soldiers is here helping Sam Lane is actually one of Morgan Edge's Kryptonians.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a bit more theorization. It's more about putting Kryptonians inside human hosts, but they have the powers, obviously, assuming their body can adapt and take to it. Because we still having the jitters. A little bit travels. But we're still getting the jitters, which makes me think the body host still has to accept it, kind of thing.
Yeah, because we know Leslie Lahr is the only one who did, fully accept it without any side effects. So
obviously they're still looking for candidates, but so we end up having this fight. There's a whole lab in here where Sam Lane's he's got scientists experimenting with kryptonite and doing various kryptonite.
Really
weapons.
liked Sam Lane in this stuff, weirdly, because when he learns where it is, it's like a section 5 or whatever. He's immediately to Claire like, you can't go there. Like, he doesn't try and hide it. It's like, right, okay, I'm not letting you go down there unprepared, because he could easily have done. And
which alternatively gives us one of the most Superman moments of this entire show so far, is where if you go down there, you will probably not come back. And Superman, without hesitation, speeds down there to save people.
Yeah.
It's just such a Superman moment. No, I agree. I agree in that moment that he immediately says, no, you can't go down there and it just comes clean. But I think even more than that, I like the conversation afterwards when Clark's getting better. And they're talking about Morgan Edge and what he's possibly up to, and that there's maybe an army of Kryptonians, blah, blah, blah. But he also just, Sam Lane, like, Clark just like, look.
Not happy about this.
Yeah, what is this? And Sam's like, look, I know I need to earn your trust back, but I need to be honest here.
This is my job. I've got to.
Yeah, we need contingencies, even against you. We need to have these things, and the whole idea with that the kryptonite gas is that it weakens you enough that you'll be susceptible to more traditional artillery and whatnot. And yeah, I think I appreciated this because Sam Lane has had some moments in this show that have been pretty decent, and he's had some moments where he's kind of the plot device that he usually is for tension. Mm-hmm. I think this was a very good example of everything that they don't usually get right with Kyle here in this Sam Lane scene, where he just kind of is honest about what he does, why he feels the way he does, but he's not just jumping to, oh, I'm siding with John Henry here and I hate you now and I don't trust you.
To the point where when John Henry's like telling him, hey, there are other Kryptonians, he's going to choose them over you. Sam doesn't actually believe him. He does trust Clark. Like, which obviously isn't true for every version of General Lane, but this version does, I think it's safe to say, even though he still plans for these contingencies. He's kind of, it's a bit Batman in that way, right?
Yeah, I've never been against Batman having the whole... I mean, that's a big thing of... what is it? Well, it's the end of Hush that it comes into play properly.
Yeah, Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babel is the one where Clark agrees that Batman should have some kryptonite kicking around in case...
Yeah.
The things go down. Because, by this point in the comics, Superman had been mind-controlled before. He's been, hit with different types of kryptonite that make him act out of character. So on and so on. There's been tons of reasons why Superman needs to get his ass whipped occasionally.
And I don't think it's unreasonable for Lane to be prepared for those sorts of scenarios. But I think also he probably should have told Clark. And I think that's kind of where they're at the end of this. Because he's like, you know what, I didn't want you to find out like this, but I do have to keep doing this.
Yeah, he doesn't promise to not do this anymore. He doesn't promise to like shut all this down. He's like,
it's such a stark difference from the reaction of this exact plot in Supergirl, where this was it, for Kara. As soon as Lena has potential kryptonite, well, that's it. Can't ever talk to her again.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think Sam Lane's stuff came off pretty well in this episode as well. And John Henry himself. And of course, the other big part of the Natalie scene is him making the choice not to kill Superman. It's when Lois says, you're so convinced and you're so determined that, if the slight chance that Superman here will be like the Superman on your Earth, which by the way is more of a justification than Batman and Batman v Superman ever has for just assuming Superman's going to eventually, kill everyone.
At least he's seen Superman choose the Kryptonians and kill them all.
Yes, and murder his wife so it's a very personal thing as well, on top of just seeing it.
Yeah, not just a hypothetical, well, it could happen someday.
Yeah. So, but it's the voice, it's the voice of his wife, the voice of his daughter's mother. It's, what does that make you if you do this to him? And, given that we now know it's Steel, and he's probably going to take that moniker up at some point and fight side by side with Superman, which they even tease at the end, because it's like, hey, this is the first sign of trust, you're just free to go. He's like, yeah, but we're not ready to fight side by side. Yeah, I've got a funny feeling that'll come around the finale. I've just got a sneaking suspicion.
That's usually how these things work out.
But I think the thing with John Henry now is that because we know who he is, and the backstory is kind of interesting, but I think I'm a lot more ready to actually enjoy the character. Okay, when we thought he was Alex, there was some interesting, like, okay, where's he from? That's the multiversal stuff's kind of interesting, but the actual him like getting close to Lois and like what's he up to? He's just trying to kill Superman. That was only interesting enough to a point. I think now I can actually kind of invest in the character where I either root for him to make the right choices, where I care about his outcomes and things like that. I can invest in him on his own terms now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I don't think this is necessarily about his identity being revealed, although I think that is a part of the reason why. When
I say identity, I mean less that he happens to be stealing John Henry Irons, and more that I can sympathize with his past with his daughter, and I can sympathize with what he's lost and things like that.
That's fair, because I think it still could have worked when it was Lex. It was just they weren't doing anything with him as a character very intentionally because they didn't want us to know that he wasn't Lex.
Yes. Oh yeah, we can have a good version of Lex, and I could root for that. Absolutely. Yeah. No reason why we can't.
This could have still been Lex, and we could have just got more character development, stuff from him as we went on, and it would have worked just as well.
Well, I think what this episode did in a lot of ways is it made a bunch of the adults. It gave them enough to be on par with how interested we are in the kids and their drama. Maybe elevated them to that same level, and the kids have their stuff this episode too. A
lot less of it.
A lot less of it, but I think what it was there is actually pretty solid.
I agree.
John's obviously we talked about a lot of John's stuff, and the one thing we've not really talked about him yet is the ending with the Lois stuff, where because again, this is them not treating us like idiots, right? We've watched so much of The Flash, we've watched so much of these other damn CW shows, right? How many times they repeat things or they forget the lessons they've just been learned. The end of last episode was Clark and Lois saying, you know what? Things going on around us are far too wacky and dangerous for us to even pretend that you're safe by us keeping secrets. So we're going to tell you everything. So we start this episode, and it's when they're fixing the truck, and they've clearly filled them in on edge and what's going on, and they should probably be out of school for a little while whilst we're dealing with John Henry. Although now that John Henry's been wrapped up as is not a threat, I'm sure they'll be back at school today, like now. But we get to the end of this episode, and how does Lois try to make amends because she knows she was too harsh on John, that she said things she didn't mean. She's like, I'm going to tell him the truth. I'm going to tell him why I got upset. And she, brings out a photo of them as kids and says, when you were 18 months old, I got pregnant. And this is clearly the first time John's ever heard this story. The kids don't know about this. And it's just, I feel not insulted by the fact that the thread of we're going to start telling them the truth. And obviously, that was everything to do with Superman and the dangers that their lives are in. This old story about the miscarriage probably wasn't even on her mind because it wasn't relevant to anything going on. And it's obvious why they didn't tell them when they're kids. Why would you tell a child that? They won't understand, and it's just a bit heavy for a kid to get. But she realizes here that the solution to this is the same solution they had to the last problem. I just have to be honest and tell him why I was upset, what the backstory is here. And she sits him on a couch and tells him about his sister, who would have been called Natalie. And
he understands.
He understands, and he, there's a heartbreaking scene. They hug, and this is a good scene. It's a good scene. What I couldn't decide. Do you think? I was joking a few episodes ago about Sam being a little miffed that he has two grandsons that are both named after Clark's dads, right? Does Natalie be named after his mother? Is that like a make good?
I don't know, but it's something like he knew all about this. He knew the name that was picked out because when they mention it, he was like, "Oh, that's a weird coincidence, almost."
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's one of those where he'll now understand that. Okay, yeah, that was it.
It does make sense to me though. Or not just to me. I just mean logically, it makes sense that Lois had the same grandmother on the other Earth, so that's why the name's the same. It's simple stuff. It tracks. So yeah, good stuff. And yeah, so that stuff's good. But then we have the other kid stuff. So Sarah, and it was probably Kyle's best episode. Not to say that all of his stuff was good.
I was ready to agree with that until the final point.
Until he went, okay, that's fair. But when he was just trying to encourage Sarah to like have some confidence and try out for this, the singing, the musical theater, or whatever it was she was auditioning for, like, you know what, I don't like him still, but he's not been annoying right now because he's benefiting
he's like,
a
I got a few days off work. Let's sort it out. He's being the good dad for the first time I think we've seen all show.
And I can respect that. The show was sort of seeing him, letting us see him be a good dad only for his own shit to get in the way and for him to miss everything by being a drunk again. Like I can respect at least the plot thread of that, advancing forward. And I actually did kind of like Sarah saying, look, like I'm not mad. Like, you don't have to just don't promise me anything because I just don't want to get my hopes up and get disappointed again. I'm not even going to make a fuss or be miserable all the time that you're a horrible drunk dad. I don't want to like pretend that it's ever going to be better. So don't do it. I kind of like that dialogue from her specifically. But I did like some sweet moments with Jordan, who has an interaction with her, and he encourages her to do it and says he'll show up and support her. Casually mentions that he did used to play piano, which is fine. We're early enough that we can introduce some new talents like that without me rolling my eyes and going, man, these characters know how to do a lot. But I think I wasn't being that cynical, even though I had that thought for like a fleeting moment, because the way they set it up where he's like, yeah, I used to do it, but then my anxiety got in the way and I couldn't perform in front of people. There was something incredibly sweet, not only about him volunteering to play some simple piano chords so she could sing her song, but it
being rusty. Yeah,
being rusty, but him being on stage with her gave him the comfort to perform. And she, it's because, John's making jokes about how he brought her a couple of flowers for her to support her. And he's like, dude, you got friends on. Come on there. But then during the song, where she's like looking at him, smiling, and she's singing a fairly romantic song, might I add. And it's like, oh.
Yeah. No, it was real nice. And also, my favorite small thing about this scene, and this is small, but it is my favorite. The piano's out of tune, and the reason I love this is because every school in the goddamn world, their piano is out of tune, without a doubt. I
remember this. I remember being. I mean, in primary school, you just had to. There was just like someone would play piano while everyone sung. But like, I remember being in a swinging band, and in high school, the piano was always a little bit out of tune.
This is assuming you're not going to a private school, because I'm sure they can afford to. But pianos are expensive to get tuned, and you have to do it more regularly than you'd like. And schools, that said, they're like, it'll do.
That's it. I remember it getting tuned once, like maybe like halfway through high school, and it did sound good for a while.
About a year usually.
Yeah, but yeah. So
but they don't get used often enough. Generally speaking, there's a rule in the school. They don't get used often enough. It's not a high enough priority in the budget, so that every school that I've ever known, pianos are out of tune. So this was just a nice touch where I'm like, they're definitely just filming in an actual school that they're borrowing.
I mean, you say that as if the sound's coming from it, or actually from that piano he was playing in the scene, and not something just added on top.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was for some of that. Because I think the vocals were overdone because they sound a lot cleaner, but the piano probably was just an out-of-tune piano in that hall.
Yeah, it was a big deal that day. I remember, like, oh, we can't go into the auditorium. They're tuning the piano. It was a big deal. The teachers were all excited. Music staff were all excited.
Mine never got tuned while I was at the school. So it was funny because I was in the orchestra, so we all had to tune our instruments to the piano. So we had to intentionally put all of our instruments out of tune and play to the piano, and then obviously the choir would sing to us, not to what in theory was correct, just so it sounded right. Otherwise, it would just sound awful.
Yeah, it just means everyone's playing slightly down a couple of notes.
Yeah, I think we were about a quarter tone out. So not huge, but enough that you would really notice it if the piano, because pianos are quite loud and take up a lot of space, sonically, that you would notice it just being wrong.
Hey, as long as everyone's the same amount down, it's fine.
Yeah, no, but pretty much
fine. So yeah, no, sweet enough stuff with the kids. Even just a little moment before this where, like, Jonathan's like, hey, I need to talk to you, Jordan. I realize you've got a thing right now, but I'm kind of going through a lot, and I saw some messed up shit today. And he's like, you're the only person I can really talk to about this, because I can't really talk to anyone else about the fact that our parents are who they are. And
he's like, yeah, sure. And I was like a little bit concerned at this point of the season, even though like it was really sweet. I was a little bit concerned that he was going to be like, right, okay, let's go now, and he was going to yank him out, and it was going to be a whole thing with, oh, why did you miss the recital? Audition was what I was looking for.
Nah, it was just Kyle who missed things. And why did he miss things? So I was a little confused by this plot, actually. Like, did Lana? So he has a line early on to Lana where it's like, hey, if there's any more positions open up, I'd love to be considered. And she says, sorry babe, there's not enough room, or whatever, blah blah blah. And then later on he goes to the office to, like, drop something off for her. And it's Lars who's like, oh yeah, it's a shame you turned down the role with a late due to work here. And when she said that, I thought, oh, is Morgan Edge intentionally like told her to do this to like mess with Kyle and like cause a rift between them? That's what I got from that scene on its own. But then when he confronted Lana, it didn't feel like she was like, what are you talking about? Like,
no, I think this stems back to I don't know if it was last episode or the one before, when Lana was picking out the candidates, and she was in the office. There was one more space left, and Edge was like, what about your husband? And she was like, oh, I don't know, it wouldn't really work with the kids, a lot of hours. I think that was the offer that she was referring to as, he could have been on it.
Maybe, I don't know, it felt a bit more specific than that to me. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Like, I can. It won't surprise me if that was an intentional, like, trying to stoke the fires a little bit.
It could be, but like I say, it did feel to me that like Edge did offer kind of like, hey, if you put your husband forward for this, I'll just okay it, and I guess that's enough to construe as a job offer in this scenario. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. That was a huge point of the episode. It was, just why he goes off on a drinking binge and misses Sarah's rehearsal, of which he was part of the act, which, so it's quite important. It's not just that he wasn't there to watch it.
He was supposed to be performing.
Yes. So
I don't know what would have been worse if he'd showed up drunk and tried to perform anyway. That would have been way worse.
That would have been worse. Yes. Also, I winced a little bit when the way he pronounces guitar.
I didn't catch it. How does he do it?
Guitar.
Oh, is he one of those? I just tune that out whenever I hear it automatically because I was just like, oh, I hate it.
It upset me. I was like, it doesn't. Like, if everyone else is talking like that, I wouldn't necessarily care as much, but it stuck out. I don't know if it, like, he was putting it on as like the stylistic choice, the character that is.
Yeah.
Not for me.
There are definitely words like that for me though. In general, just basically there are a lot of like American pronunciations of words that just annoy me. Like I'm like it just annoys me, and it's wrong, and I don't like hearing it. And obviously, I have to just accept that they say it wrong because it's in all the goddamn film and TV in the world.
Well, to be fair with guitar, a lot of Americans say guitar correctly.
No, they do. That's why this isn't just, you know, I'm not pointing this out as one, but there are a lot of specific words that Americans on the whole say wrong, and it just annoys me.
Okay. I'm not usually too fussed. I just didn't like guitar.
Yeah, it is pretty obnoxious.
So yeah, that was the episode. Pretty good. Probably one of the strongest the show has had, I think. And maybe more impressive that a lot of the stronger elements of it were not the same elements that have been, you know, typically very strong episode to episode.
I think it's also worth noting as well that we're saying, you know, that the performances elevated this episode, and it did, you know, without a doubt. But I don't think it's in the same level as, you know, there are episodes like Supergirl where we'd say, oh, you know, these, you know, actors elevated these scenes that would have been terrible if not for their delivery.
No.
I still think this was like well-written drama.
Yeah, no, this was still a solid episode, but it went into sort of really great territory at times because of the performances, like really bringing it up. As
opposed to, oh, that was surprisingly okay, instead of just outright bad, which was the bar on a lot of the others.
Yeah, that's the usual caliber for the CW, so maybe times are changing. Hey, if Stargirl keeps up its quality as well when it comes back, then, you know, I'll have to start giving CW some cred.
It's going to be really depressing if it doesn't.
Same creative team for the most part, I think, so.
I know, and I shouldn't be worried, but I just like it so much.
Superman and Lois has made me feel fairly comfortable about it.
Me too.
I feel fairly comfortable because of this show. So, no, good stuff. So, uneasy alliance with Steel, who I presume is going to continue investigating Edge, maybe even team up with Lois again after a bit, and then eventually agree to help Superman. I don't know if we get to the point where he's willing to put Superman's logo on his chest. I mean, that might take a little bit more time and convincing, but
I'm waiting for the inevitable point where Clark has to unmask, so to speak, and kind of like come clean as to who he is as Superman, and to make him understand why Lois trusts him so much, to the extent that...
Do you know what's so funny is I really thought it was happening at this point, because you know when he's outside, because the kids, and I actually kind of like this they were wrong, but I kind of like that the kids stopped because he was outside, that he was going to be like staying with them, and I thought, oh, is he staying with them? And I thought for the few moments there, I thought, oh well, Cully is going to find out that like Superman's the husband, and that's going to, like, you know, bring all this together. But then Superman shows up and is like, well, good day, Miss Lane, and flies off, and I'm like, okay, all right, let's keep it up the charade. All right,
yeah, for now.
For now, yes. I'm sure it will come up at some point. But, yeah. Although you'd think he'd be able to put two and two together, given that Clark Kent's kids showed up to save Superman before. If you've seen them yet, even, in the context.
Yeah, I don't know if... No, I think he has.
Yeah.
Briefly. But, yeah. Maybe he didn't really see them that much, because he was kind of... He got knocked by the car, and then Superman was on him.
Yeah, although someone did point out in the comments that the reason why he flew back so far, it was actually the hammer. It was the build up of, like, so the hammer had like a kinetic field or whatever, and
yeah, I saw this in the comments, and I was watching it in the previously on, and I'm looking at it and going, I'll buy it. It doesn't work for me.
I wasn't paying attention.
Sorry, commenter.
I wasn't paying attention to the previously on to actually see if I agree.
The only reason I've started paying attention to the previously on in this, because I caught it a few episodes ago, and now I can't stop. It's starting to sound like Fast and Furious. They're constantly going on about family in the previously ons. And once I caught it, and it was in my head because we were talking about those movies at work that day. It was just, that's it. That's all I can hear in these previously ons now. I'm sorry for anyone who I've just ruined them for.
I find it very easy not to think about Fast and the Furious, so I think I'll be good.
Let's see if you feel that way next week.
I think I'll be good. There you go. That is Holding the Range, episode 8. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe. All that stuff does help out a lot on YouTube. It'll help us find more audience, so please do. You can support us financially as well by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 per month, and it'll help out a bunch and help keep all the content coming. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?